Ladies and gentlemen, we have now coming to the stage are two amazing people. One of them, a very, very, very good, well, they're both good friends of mine, but a good friend of mine, a team member of mine, a person that I've had the honor and pleasure of working with. Another man, a really good friend. You know Christopher Anatra is the quantum businessman. He's the president and CEO of a computer software company specializing in food distribution. I wonder where that's located. Which started in 1990. At the end of 2016, Chris began a spiritual awakening process, which has been continuing to this day. Part of the process involved the Mandela Effect and how that phenomenon was changing the names of food products that his clients dealt with on the daily basis. This included the famous Hass avocado to always being Hass avocado, which there's a bad word in there if you ever break that down. HS avocado, I don't know, maybe that's a clue, I don't know. Or products like Stouffer's stovetop stuffing never existed. Apparently I don't know how to use a microphone right. Leave it to a radio guy to not know how to use a microphone, right? Sean Bond is the founder of Silver Cord Spiritual Science and the Psionic League. He is a psychic, psionic specialist, and healer with a vast skill set, which includes tapping into the quantum database of Earth's Akashic records, accessing past life knowledge, skill sets, and dominant abilities. Sean can assist in creating operating systems to help individuals manifest dormant abilities to unlock their psychic potential and upgrade the body's energy systems. Everyone embodies spiritual technology which encompasses an infinite scope of possibilities, such as connecting the individual with their spiritual entourage, their higher selves, Great Spirit, the Creator, the Earth's Mother's realms, and other expressions of themselves throughout time and space to resolve issues and exchange wisdom, knowledge, and skill sets. Whoever wrote that put a lot of information in a really small space. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor and pleasure to welcome to the stage Christopher Anatra and Sean Bond.
Thanks, Jerry.
Thank you, Chris.
Hi, everyone. Hello, all you lucid dreamers. You're dreaming me. Is it possible I'm dreaming you while Earth Mother dreams all of us? So this presentation is going to go like way out there. So if you've been watching some of my other videos, you kind of might have an idea of the stuff that I talk about and how that relates to the Earth game and the concept that we're dreaming. And this is a holographic type experience that we're having. About halfway through the presentation, Sean and myself are going to be decoding a very famous Mandela effect. And it's not going to be what you think. I also wanted to mention, too, that when I scan the room, my higher self scans the room, approximately 88% of you are involved in time travel, and you don't know it. Or you may be aware of it, but you may be aware of it. And then the majority of you that are involved with that also have a tie-in with organizations that we would be considered as time cops or time authorities. And this is going to become important too, because when we get to the end of the presentation, we're going to be talking about time and time travel and how that works. And what you're thinking right now, by the time this is all over, you're just going to be on a whole different level. So sit back, enjoy, open your minds to the possibility. Some of the things that I'm going to talk about might be hard concepts to first grasp. And your left brain is going to fight with your right brain. But these are things that I consider secrets of the matrix and how this reality works. So I'm going to go to my first slide. Okay, got it. Got it. Excellent. Okay, so in this presentation, it's broken down into 3 parts. Why am I presenting in this timeline? Revealing the game, and how to decode Mandela effects. And this last part, how to decode Mandela effects, is important because are they random? Are they just random things that happen? Or are we getting hidden messages from these Mandela effects, from perhaps a higher source, from perhaps ourselves? Revealing the game. Is this a game? Is this a dream? A lot of times when you start studying Mandela effects and you look into what the quantum physicists say in quantum mechanics, they bring you to a certain level, but they don't expose the other part of it. Is this just a random holographic type experience we're having, or is there more to it than that? And then the first part I'm going to talk about here is why I am presenting in this timeline. At the first Mandela Effect conference, I did a sing-along. And I'm not going to do that to you guys today. But basically, since we were children, we were all taught a song. And a song that I believe is big, soft disclosure about what this reality is. Row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Merrily, 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 life is but a dream. Exactly. Life is but a dream. Is that possible? So these are the things that we're going to talk about, this whole dreaming concept and how that works. I also wanted to mention, too, because when Tom Campbell started speaking, by the time he presented all of his information, I'm thinking to myself, we just converted Tom Campbell. Because when we had, IMEC had a podcast with him, and I think at that time he wasn't 100% sold.
I remember.
Yes.
Yeah, on what?
Tried to explain it rationally.
Yeah.
Exactly. So for those of you that are watching this presentation and haven't watched Cynthia's or Tom's yet, just to give you some background, Tom was talking about how him and his wife were cleaning out their cabinet and they came across all these different nasal sprays, and one was called 4-Way. And it was interesting because it had 4 ingredients, and they looked up what the ingredients were, etc. He orders it again, and it comes in, and there's only now a single ingredient. So to him, to me, that's a big personal Mandela effect. So if you think about that, and the 4 of us on the IMEC board that were talking to him, perhaps we did a 4-way where we helped convince him of exactly what the Mandela effect is. So, yeah. And that's an example. All these things have meanings. I don't think it's random that the nasal spray was called 4-Way. So just throwing that out there. Okay, so there's 3 points about the Mandela effect I want to mention. The Mandela effect is a consequence of retribution for those that are manipulating the natural order. And that's a heavy sentence. The Mandela effect is a consequence of retribution for those that are manipulating the natural order. Is it possible that this order is being manipulated to some extent? And we have no idea. We've had no idea our entire lives. The second point, there shall be no more secrets. All memories will come to the surface as each individual has the burning blood desire to discover what the Mandela effect is for them. And isn't that why we're here? Like, we have that desire. It burns in our blood. We need to figure this out. This isn't just random. We're not misremembering. And then we begin to realize we can start to unravel the puzzle, that there is a big puzzle in front of us, and then these puzzle pieces start coming together so we can interpret what the reality is. And then the last point here, everything revealed in this presentation is a direct result from the Mandela effect and having the burning blood desire to discover what this experience is while its secrets are revealed. So everything that I'm going to talk about, I would not be here. I would not be talking to you about the Mandela effect at all if it wasn't for the Mandela effect and what that led to the next thing, to the next thing. And for those of you that don't know, I also read the Akashic Records, which is, I call it the script database. There's the whole concept of all the world's a stage, Truman Show type scenario. And when you read someone's Akashic Records, you're basically looking at the script or the different lives that they've had before. So that's a way of interpreting or understanding what that's all about. And you'll hear me use a lot of computer terms. You know, we are in a software company right now, and I've been creating software, since the late 80s. So, and a lot of things that I say will actually have a tie into that too. So this is where we are. We're going to talk about these Mandela effects. We're going to go to our first slide. Okay, so the Matrix. Morpheus says to Neo, what is real? How do you define real? If you're talking about what you can feel, what you can smell, what you can taste and see, then real is simply electrical signals interpreted by your brain. And really, that's what it is. What is real? Our 5 senses project what the world is around us. And what we see on our holographic view screen in front of us operating at 60 frames per second is the world that we see. This type of concept is going to be important. Now, what's interesting too, Morpheus says, what is real? First of all, in Greek mythology, if you didn't know this, Morpheus is the god of dreams. Very interesting that that's the name that was chosen for this character. Now, a Mandela effect is that everyone remembers Morpheus saying, what if I told you everything you know is a lie? He doesn't say that anymore in the Matrix. That statement is not made. So instead, in that same scene, we have a change going from what if I told you everything you know is a lie to what is real. It makes, just having this concept makes the Matrix control on people weaker, because if you know you're in a prison or you're in a situation that's not the truth being revealed to you, you work on ways to break out. Mandela effects are what is exposing it all. So the universe is not locally real. Some of you may have heard about that. 3 people won the 2022 Physics Nobel Prize. They did some elegant experiments with entangled light to show that the universe is not locally real. And what quantum physicists will tell us now is that time and space doesn't exist. It's the dream. Time and space is the simulation within our bubble of reality. So what is real versus what if I told you everything you know is a lie? Real versus a lie. Genuine versus imaginary. Authentic versus bogus. Honest versus assumed. Factual versus phony. Natural versus counterfeit. So these are the types of concepts and how things have switched. So now we're looking at, we want this column. We want to know what's genuine. We're done with imaginary. We're done with bogus. We're done with these different kinds of concepts. Next thing I want to mention is, what is up with quantum businessman? Like, why would I choose a name like that? And I've had people that have asked me, like, that's not a good name. You should have chose something else. Like, I don't know. And why am I presenting in this final time loop of this timeline? And for those of you that don't know, and I'll talk about this a little bit, deja vu, timelines, time loops. What is deja vu? Could it be a glitch in the matrix where we actually remember on another timeline where we actually did that same thing, whatever we're remembering? What is my end game? And if you don't know, I'm very passionate about what I talk about. And this is something that it's not like, this doesn't make me any money. So in fact, it's put my software business at risk. And on different levels, both with clients and also even with employees. So right here in this room is where I used to have Mandela Mondays. So I'd have my employees here for our Monday staff meeting. We talk about Mandela effects. And I was like so excited about like, hey, have you heard the latest one about this or that? What I found out was that some of my employees, it was really bothering them. They just weren't ready to hear it. And my main programmer, my main software engineer, wound up leaving because he's like, Chris, I just don't want to hear any more Mandela effects. Meanwhile, there was always this group of people that were always sitting, there was 3 of them that would always sit in the front row, and whatever it was in this timeline is whatever it was. They never heard of stove or stovetop stuffing. It was always a magic mirror on the wall. Whatever it was, the Monopoly man never had a monocle. And I'm like, really? And that's also a reveal to be who were those people actually, and what is going on with that whole concept. So this room has a lot of history, and we're making even more Mandela effect history in this room. Time loops reveal deja vu, where we remember the dress rehearsal from a previous loop. Using the word dress rehearsal, could this be in a way a dress rehearsal, a way to get things just right? Could that be one of the reasons for us even, existing and having these time loops? We practice, we mess up, the loop ends, we start over again, and it happens over and over and over again. I believe from what I've seen in the Akashic records, we've all been looping this lifetime perhaps hundreds or thousands of times. as unbelievable as that sounds. We don't know because we have amnesia. As soon as we come back in and we're born, we forget everything, and it's like we're starting all over. Our memory gets erased for each time loop restart. So again, going back to the quantum businessman, the hypothesis that I have, and what I've been able to see for myself in the Akashic Records, is I did something famous in business in each of these time loops. So the hypothesis is that timelines are merging, and that's perhaps why there's so many Mandela effects. And we are all invested in these time loops. And I call the ones that failed time poops. So, so people may remember me in the future for something I never did. People may start to remember you for something you never did. So these are the things we have to be aware of. And could it be that even your own parents may be unsure of who you are? So your family, your parents, those that are close to you, because if all these timelines are coming together and merging, that is a definite possibility. It's also an excellent way to teach how this reality works. But some will have mental breakdowns. So, you know, if you're not being exposed to this information, and all of a sudden it's like, wait, you had this business, you did this. And I like to think of myself as a singer in another timeline. You're another, you know, dream on, dream on. So, yes, so it's going to be one of those things where people may not understand. They're going to be totally confused. So with us shining our light and learning all these things now, I think that's going to go a long way to helping others as they begin to awaken. Because when you think about it, you know, we have a, I'll call it a wake-up date on our alarm clock. And until you reach the wake-up date, you're just not going to wake up. But when that wake-up date hits, then all of a sudden you can start to become more receptive to Mandela effects and how the reality works. Perhaps, oh, this is something interesting because I have a feeling that in other timelines I dress differently and maybe had my hair different. And some of you may notice that, well, I've tried to do this in all of my Quantum Businessman videos. I try to change my look a little bit. So, and now if you look at the first one we did in Ketchum, Idaho, I had really short hair, now I've got the long hair going on. Sometimes, and I think women know this, is that if you change your hair, you can change a timeline. So keep that in mind as well. So what is a quantum businessman? Is it possible that I was an Elon Musk type individual? How many other products could I have created besides this little company with the NECS software? Could have made 50 other versions of software or 100 other versions of software. 100 versions of myself that got successful enough, much more than what I have here at NECS. Could you have seen me on Forbes magazine, Fortune 500, Top 50, et cetera, et cetera? This same phenomena can happen to you. Be open to it. How this works. Okay, so, all right, I'm going to expand your mind with this one. A lot of you are familiar with the Fruit Loops Mandela effect, where so many of us remember it's spelled F-R-U-I-T, not F-R-O-O-T. So for myself, being in food distribution and eating this cereal as a kid, you know, you'd see it all the time. So, and you even would remember how the U and the I were formed. They had a very specific form. So when I look at Mandela effects and try to get the hidden meaning to them, sometimes you look at the frequency of the words. Is it the same word with a different frequency? Is it N-O, no as in N-O, or is it no as in K-N-O-W, as an example? What happened is something came to me. I was in a hypnagogic state probably 2.5 weeks ago. It's not the frequency of the word. This is an acronym. F-R-O-O-T. Frequency repeat of original timeline loop. Frequency repeat of original timeline. F-R-O-O-T. Is it possible that Fruit Loops is actually representing a time loop repeating from an original timeline? Who caused this? Scanning into it, this Mandela effect is caused by the prime creator of the galaxy. Who is the prime creator of the galaxy? That would be that being that helped create this part of the game, one of the founder species on a galactic level. So, and that's another concept I talk about. I talk about the founders. I talk about the dragons. I talk about the designers of this reality and how probably most of you here are all dragons, without a doubt, of all different levels. That's why you're ultra attracted to this information. It's almost like magnetically you were pulled into hearing what I say, what Cynthia says, etc., and even coming to this conference. You knew you had to be here. Fruit Loops. Toucan Sam, he would say, follow your nose, it always knows. Follow your nose, it always knows. Did he mean the nose? Or did he mean thinking and nose? Or could he have also meant follow your nose down to your heart, and the 40,000 neurons in your heart, it always knows, as you emit the golden rainbow light out of your heart. Because I believe that's what's also going to be happening. We are going to be getting to a point where we think more out of our heart, and we become more heart-based instead of left brain-based, right brain-based, etc. Now, when this happened, Earth and all of her realms had a crown chakra upgrade for this Mandela effect, and that was the reason for it, from what I see. The crown chakra connects us to the divine consciousness. I understand, or I know. Now, when you start looking at this information, it feels like you're going down rabbit holes. Like, should I go down this rabbit hole? Is this going to make sense? Where does this lead to? But these rabbit holes are actually pathways to discovery. If you follow them, the answers will pop up. Now, Fruit Loops is made of all these different colors, right? So colors represent a frequency of visible light. And Fruit Loops come in 6 colors: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, and purple. In 2018, Wild Berry Fruit Loops came out, and it has a purple star. Perhaps that represented the crown chakra. And it's interesting how your third eye is indigo, and then the crown is violet. They're both that purple color. Okay, so the unicorns were very insistent. They wanted to come into this presentation. So I'm going to spend a couple of slides here with the unicorns. In the UK, Fruit Loops revealed or introduced a cereal called Unicorn Fruit Loops. What are unicorns? So here's some things about unicorns I'm allowed to reveal. Unicorns are a founder race that anchors horses into this reality. In fact, when I went to Ireland, I had an interaction with a horse where there was a unicorn that was remote viewing me through the horse. That's another story. It's also Scotland's national animal. You can go into Google and type in Scotland's national animal, and the unicorn comes up. Alexander the Great, Confucius, and Pliny the Elder all reported seeing unicorns. The global narrative tells us that unicorns in the Bible are the rhinoceros, because one breed of rhinoceros has one horn. Now, all the rhinoceroses I've ever known always have 2 horns, but there is one breed that has 1 horn. And there's examples of that. There's 8 unicorn references in the Bible. I grew up reading the Bible, and I don't remember. There may have been 1, but I don't remember 8. An example is Psalms 92:10. But my horn shall thou exalt like the horn of a unicorn. I shall be anointed with fresh oil. And that's from the King James Version. Now, we're going to talk about revealing the game. Is this a chess game? Because a lot of times I'll use that terminology when I'm creating my videos. Is this a chess game? If it's a chess game, what's going on? Who are the players? What are the sides? What is the strategy? Salvador Dali painted this famous painting that I never heard of called the Corpus Hypercubus. It's the Christ on a hypercube or 4D unfolded 3D cube. Cube, could it be a container to keep us locked in time? And at the bottom of the painting, you'll notice that there is a chessboard. Again, more possible evidence of a game going on. Is this a message from Salvador Dali? Are there more messages in his other paintings? Maybe some messages that he may not have even been consciously aware of, but his higher self did and wanted to communicate that to us. The chessboard is composed of 64 squares and 16 pieces of each color. So here's a little rabbit hole I went down. It had to do with the number 64. Could the number 64 be a clue as to the game that we're in and the reality that we're in and how we're possibly locked into this reality until the cube becomes unfolded into the hypercube? And by the way, too, this is not just about the number 64, but I wanted to give you an example of how you can start looking at numbers and starting to see the patterns with your pattern recognition and any kind of research you do. First of all, the number 64 is a perfect cube number. It's 4 times 4 times 4. And again, when you go down these rabbit holes, these pathways to discovery begin to open up. Numbers are the building blocks of reality. It's us to explore and go deeper into their significance. And you take the whole chessboard concept that goes back to Sanskrit, one of the oldest languages on the planet that goes back to the gods. As far as the history we know, it could go back even further. Now, a common symbol in Freemasonry is the chessboard floor. Its black and white tiles represent being stuck in base consciousness, dualistic thinking. And isn't that really how most of the world is right now? We're stuck in that base consciousness. The chessboard consists of, this is a quote from Manly P. Hall. The chessboard consists of 64 squares, alternately black and white, and symbolizes the floor of the house of mysteries. And this painting is called this painting shows the pillars of beauty, wisdom, and strength. And what's interesting is on the next slide, I'm going to talk about these three symbols here, and I'm going to give you guys a dream activation. Okay, so you've got the three symbols. The sun in your right eye, the third eye representing truth, and the moon is your left eye. So here's the esoteric dream activation. Don't try to understand it, I'm just going to say it. The back of the sun is the moon, reflecting off the ionosphere. You're going to try to process that and be like, that doesn't make any sense. How could that be possible? Try not to, don't think about it too much, but just wonder, does it make sense that the full moon is the same size in the sky as the sun? Does it make sense that when there's a solar eclipse, the moon will block out the sun perfectly, the way they cross their pattern? If you look it up online, I think scientists call it a super coincidence. Not just a coincidence, but a super coincidence. So does that make sense? And will our third eye of truth begin to come more online? Some of you may already have your third eye turned on, turning on, etc. For myself, definitely lately with all these different energies coming in, feel pressure on my third eye, and so forth. So these are all things to keep in mind. Going back to the number 64, I Ching, known as the Book of Changes, ancient divination predicting the future, resembles a chessboard composed of, again, the number 64 hexagrams. And again, 64 is that perfect cube number. It's 4 times 4 times 4. The human genetic code includes 64 codons, 64 three-letter words called codons in the human DNA. A codon is a sequence of 3 nucleotides on a strand of DNA. 4 nucleotides in DNA are made up of the molecules thymine, adenine, cytosine, and guanine. 4 times 4 times 4 equals 64 possible codons. Again, 64 is a perfect cube. Is it possible in the future our DNA can begin to expand and there could be more than these 64 codons? Something to keep in mind. And then there's the famous Copper Dead Sea Scroll. How many of you, have at least heard of the Dead Sea Scrolls? Okay. How many of you have never heard of the one that was made of pure copper? Yes, some of you may have heard of it. So, I'm doing research, and what's going to happen with you guys, too, is that you'll start doing research on things, and these things just pop out. I'm like, Copper Dead Sea Scroll. I grew up in a very religious household, and, the Dead Sea Scrolls were like a proof of, the way the Old Testament was, and blah, blah, blah. I never heard of one that was copper. It was discovered in 1952 in the Qumran cave. And what's interesting about it is that it took them 10 years to unravel that copper scroll. And what was on it? It was a treasure map of 64 hidden treasure locations. People have been searching for those locations, like under the stairs of the Temple of Apollo or whatever it was. They haven't been able to find anything. Now, there's also all these documentaries about the copper scrolls. And I never heard of that. So it seems like Mandela effects just follow us no matter where we go. Another 64 cells before the cells start to differentiate after conception, called late blastula, to begin gastrula for cell differentiation, which begins the container for consciousness to eventually come in. And of course, we all know that the heart is the first organ to form. So we have this concept of, again, the number 64 related to how we're formed after conception. 64 is also a fundamental number in computer memory and bits of code. And there is exactly 64 generations from Adam until Jesus. So again, 64, 64, 64. According to the, I'm going to start this video on here. I believe I can start. All right. So according to the physics of Nassim Haramein, the 64 kept popping up. If you don't know who Nassim Haramein is, he's like an astrophysicist. He's big into sacred geometry, consciousness, how the universe works, etc. According to what he teaches, the 64 tetrahedron grid is the seed geometry of what eventually becomes, with more and more octave growth, the infinite holographic, holofractographic vacuum structure of the entire universe. And this is part of his unified field theory, that everything is fractals, infinitely up and down.
The 64 tetrahedron grid kind of bloomed in to a whole new understanding of the structure of the vacuum. It was exactly what I needed. It had an equilibrium at the center that was actually surrounded by another equilibrium. And you could visualize this structure growing in perfect fractal octaves from infinitely big to infinitely small. I had not only my polarities producing the equilibrium and singularity, but as it did, it produced fractal structures that could be scaled from infinitely big to infinitely small. I felt I had found something very profound. It was a true three-dimensional fractal structure. And it grew in perfect octaves.
And what this video is going to show was an example of the Mandelbrot fractal. And if you've ever done mushrooms, I may have done that in the past. When you see this, it reminds you of having those experiences, because I would see this Mandelbrot pattern everywhere. Even looking at clouds, clouds would change into sacred geometry figures floating in the sky. So again, showing possibility of how this reality works. And of course, the Beatles, will you still need me? Will you still feed me when I'm 64? So I'd throw the Beatles in there too. So is this a game? Are we dreaming? Can we lucid dream? Double slit experiment, the observer changes the observe. Cynthia talked about Wigner's friend experiment, the observer, or I'm going to add this, can the observer of the observer change the observed? How far down the rabbit hole can you go with that? Something to think about. Me dreaming you, you dreaming me, Earth dreaming all of us, in our bubbles of reality. Okay, so this is going to be another part that's going to challenge you a little bit as far as to how you understand how the reality works. And this is going to involve the cereal aisle in your supermarket. First of all, is it possible that we are in the most advanced hard light, 5 senses, holographic reality, dream super quantum mainframe computer? It may not sound very interesting, it may not sound very nice, but is it possible that our consciousness is having an experience with our 5 senses in a kind of technology? So how does a dream state work? You go to the supermarket, you go down the cereal aisle, you see all these colorful boxes of cereal. Now, the way your mind will process it, because this is what you've taught, if we're talking about cornflakes, for example, it started with farmers in a field planting their corn. The crops of the corn would grow. They'd harvest the corn. They'd bring the corn to the facility where they make the cornflakes. The cornflakes get put into the boxes. The distribution trucks, distribute it around the country, and it ends up in your cereal aisle. However, is that the way the reality could be working? Or if you're dreaming and there were no player characters around to create the product, how did it get there? So there's the whole concept of player characters with consciousness energy that are observing the dream. And then there's the also concept of non-player characters. So if there were no player characters that observed any of this, how did it get there? Is it possible that we're dreaming the entire experience? Is it possible this could be a clue to prevent things like food shortages, for example? The dreamer can change the dream. So it's an advanced way of understanding the possibility of how the reality would work. And when we see the cereal aisle, is it something that we've created for ourselves? Or, and there could have been players involved in parts of the process, but possibly there wasn't. If a tree falls in the forest, does it make a sound? It's the same exact concept. And what I feel is that if there's no player characters to observe the tree falling in the forest, it will not make a sound. But a player character can go to that part of the forest, observe that it's fallen, and see the end result, things that have been calculated for it to be that way. Same way in software design. If you created a game like Grand Theft Auto, and that Grand Theft Auto map has like 100 square miles on it, and you've got 500 players playing Grand Theft Auto, is it going to render like every inch of that part of the game? It wouldn't make sense for it to do that. It's only where you can observe it. So keep that in mind as well. Okay, so if you have this one ready, Heather, I'm going to talk about how we render into this matrix dream state illusion using cymatics, HLT, hard light technology. Now, a lot of you know what cymatics are. You put sand or water on a vibrating plate and it'll make a pattern. You can make all these, depending on the frequency, you can make all these beautiful, interesting patterns. Could that be a clue if what Tesla said is correct? If you want to understand the universe, think of energy, frequency, and vibration, that what we are as our avatar, what we see all around us, is actually vibration of this hard light technology. And I have an example. If you need to come up and show that, that's fine. Of how this would work. I found this artist who creates cymatic art. And this is a video. It's going to be about 2 minutes. I'm going to just have you watch it through once, and then I'm going to explain to you what you're seeing. Okay, so when I first saw this, I immediately recognized the importance of what this is representing and how, Jerry, there's no way I'm going to finish this in 5 minutes. I got, yeah, okay. So, because Sean and I have a big part, we might, well, okay. I'll go through these as quickly as possible. But basically, could this be showing us the way that frequency and vibration works, especially when you consider that those images were exactly the same, they were flipped? Could that also show us how the aging process works as well? And then when we could really understand that, does that give us the clues to be able to reverse aging and reverse disease and reverse things just by getting into the frequency and going through it through that level? So. Okay. All right, so I'm going to go past this. Okay, so this is the part I want to talk to with Sean about. So Sean, come on up. We're going to talk about. Yeah, we got a unicorn. So.
How are you guys? Unicorns, dragons, humans, gods, ETs, secret divinity out there? How are you doing?
Can you guys hear Sean? Okay.
No.
Okay. So Sean.
Hello.
Was that a little better? Okay.
Hello.
So what we're going to do, Sean, I'll stand on this side. You can stand on that side. We're going to talk about how to decode Mandela effects. And the first one is compare and contrast before and after. There's a few slides that go into this more detail, so we'll do that next. But the things to consider would be, for example, who caused the change in the now timeline? So Sean, is there anything you'd want to say about that or any of these other bullet points?
Well, it's a lot, but how much time we got?
I know.
3 minutes.
Well, perfect. Well, I mean, time is a big thing. It's one of the older types of energies. Anyone, if they want to, can gain authority in it. You are a fractal of the all, the divinity, and as you go within and you let go of the finite and the illusions and the Maya, and you go within and embrace that, and you earn your way through moral code, you show the rest of all being that you're responsible enough to take up with the responsibility, the power, being able to influence the progression of the dreamscape, the movie, the timeline, whatever words you want to use for the progression of light being shown to you in the perceiving movement of physical body objects. So there are high-level authorities that already earned it and have been kind of near its inception, and then there's people that are taking up the mantle place as we're all being taught in this school.
Okay, I'm going to go on to the next slide. Okay, so compare and contrast before and after. So if the words changed, look at the frequency of the words. If the image changed, examine the new image for clues. For example, with the thinker statue, going from the fist on the forehead versus open hand on the chin. It's hard to think versus thinking like a philosopher. If it has to do with human anatomy, is it revealing an upgrade? Why is it better? For some people, the cryptochromes in our eyes, which are magnetic sensors, that a lot of people never realize we have these magnetic sensors in our eyes. What does that mean? Could it be related to us seeing new colors in the future based upon Earth's weakening magnetic field, or I should say her field going back to normal? If it's a dead and alive again, did that person accomplish something good on the timeline where they lived longer? Very quickly, American Gothic painting. You know, you look at this painting, everyone remembers the old lady wearing the bonnet with the gray hair. Now it's the farmer and his daughter. Look at the eyes, look at her eyes. Look at his, both in the original painting that most of us remember, they're both looking straight ahead. Now in this timeline, she's looking off to the side. Maybe she wants a different direction. And there's no bonnet, which was a Mennonite Amish sign of submission. Maybe that submission isn't there anymore, because norms need to be tested even if they're worse. And is that what our society is going to? Go ahead, Sean.
It's a big reflection of at least the Western world and masculine and the feminine, kind of the breakaway and the feminine needing to find her own and look in a different direction. There's a lot of our wisdom keepers have been killed off, and the grand examples of high level masculine and feminine, divine masculine and feminine. So we got to figure out what's going on. Sometimes we make a lot of mistakes, but we forgive ourselves and others as we will eventually find the light and find our true path, and breaking away from norms. Some of the norms, like we need to conserve, but it is also important that we balance the left brain with our right brain in creativity of new pathways, so that we never find ourselves in stagnation. And there seems to be a representation with the before and after, with various Mandela effects, like this one that seems to be representing America.
Okay, so now this is the big thing. We're going to decode, actually very quickly now, what the fruit of the loom missing cornucopia means. So Cynthia mentioned about the University of Chicago's study, where basically most of the people all picked the cornucopia, and that's probably what all of us remember as part of the fruit of the loom. We all would pick option C. What is the cornucopia? The horn of plenty. Represents abundance. And there's a mythological story about baby Zeus and the immortal goat's horn of inexhaustible milk supply. Also, too, it pulls abundance from a pocket universe, like that cornucopia was a horn that would pull abundance out of a pocket universe. Similar to the story about Jesus with the loaves and the fishes. It's also, the cornucopia logo is also on our waistband. Was it waist as in stomach area, or waste, like don't waste that abundance? And the horn is also a musical instrument that emits a sound frequency vibration, the frequency of abundance. Now, where else is the cornucopia used? Thanksgiving. A lot of people probably remember, if it's not fruit of the loom, when they see a cornucopia, it's on Thanksgiving. It's a holiday to celebrate the harvest with origins to 1623 between the Native Americans, Wampanoag tribe, and the Pilgrims.
And there's a religious kind of thing with the natives where they see it as this great aspect of Great Spirit that's like a tornado that brings abundance down, like a vortex. Many people talk about like a vortex of abundance type of law of attraction thing. It's similar to that. And its force and its ability to, especially with the harvest and the seasons and the house of bread and like around September, and what people get coming back to them. And so people can work with this collective consciousness of abundance and help it. And there appears to be some iffy stuff going on with it, as he's going to go.
So could the missing cornucopia be a negative timeline change, possibly caused by various levels of time travel? So I'm addressing you in the audience, and I'm addressing those in the future audience. I'm addressing those involved in these different time travel organizations and those that are trying to preserve the best timelines. Why? Native Americans are seen as a spiritual threat to the government. Time travelers, is it possible they could have caused treaties to not be respected by the government, whose purpose was to lower Native American populations and reduce their abundance, which would increase dominance of the United States and its military, to keep them as welfare alcoholics. A lot of times we hear that about Indians. And could there have been a butterfly effect of more control, power, less threats?
For those that may have not gone down the rabbit hole of time travel and its possible existence, key terms to look into, things like chronovision, looking glass technology, Project Pegasus, Tesla Vortal tunnel technology, Philadelphia experiment, the movie Prestige that goes into a little bit, and the trickle of being able to reproduce the technology of the pineal gland, be able to tune into the residual frequency throughout all existence that represents time for the residual frequency of the past, the potential frequency of the future, and the multiple timelines within that, and then bring it up on a screen that can be seen, and then make a window out of it, various shapes that have been made, such as toroidal fields, things like stargates, portals, or tunnels that you may have to move through. There's many people talk about these. So more of the projects, if this exists, then there'd be already existing, because all time and space can be kind of collapsed and seen as a singularity in some perceived modes of consciousness that transcend those things. People in the future already have it, some timelines. So the government, hey, maybe there's some positive, negative factions that are coming back in time, trying to maintain control, or some other type of faction. And why wouldn't they want to be involved in this game? And maybe there's like a rule system for, hey, don't mess with everything, don't make it obvious, or whatever, so that there's paradoxes made through constantly making new timelines through changing outcomes in the major spectrum.
Exactly. If you look at this painting too, this is a painting from 1937. What is he holding there? The global narrative tells us it's a mirror.
Yeah, can we take its whole? What do you think this is?
Well, if you look really closely, 14 looks like.
You see the Apple symbol?
A little camera, maybe.
So this is from this mural. It's actually in Springfield, Massachusetts, 1937. People believe this 1937 painting by muralist
Cell phones.
Umberto Romano shows time travel is real. Is it a cell phone? Is it a hand mirror? And if it's a hand mirror, why is it rectangular? Most hand mirrors are circular. It's called Mr. Pynchon and the Settling of Springfield from the 1630s. And it's also interesting, too, that's when all of these broken treaties, mistrust, and Indian massacres started to occur. The big one, 1637, right here in Connecticut, the Pequot Massacre, also known as the Mystic Connecticut Massacre. The white man killed 500 Pequot adults and children when they were sleeping. Is this part of a timeline war? Is this the type of thing that some people that have this technology are involved with?
Say with a hypothetical, if somehow people like the government got in the hands of mind control. Time travel. They got mind control. But so if they did, what do they do with it? Well, they're really obsessed with like their name. So like government in Latin, I believe, is govern, control, and ment is mind. So they like to control in the collective consciousness of the people. So whatever the tools they can gain to do that. How would you use time travel control? Well, you can do things that you have a predictive model with AI that sets in place what would happen if these little events changed. Would this increase our control or decrease it? And then also they're maintaining what they have.
Yeah, so keep in mind all of this stuff comes from looking at the Akashic records and seeing about that missing cornucopia and how that created a ripple through time. And I don't think it's anything that, if time travel was involved, I don't think that that's one of the things they had planned at all. But it's one of the consequences for us to look into and discover what's really going on. So some goals: is it possible to form a council with our higher selves and vote on the best outcome? Because what if we, instead of just being the observer to all of this, what if we could have some degree of authority and change the timelines? Would we want to? Would we want to be able to do that? And I'm not talking to you, I'm talking to your higher selves right now. Something for you all to consider. And those in the future audience as well, those that are watching this on whatever platform, something for you to consider. I'm going to go to the next slide unless there's anything you want me to talk about on this. If
you guys want to raise your hand, if you had found yourself having the authority to make everything better in this world, would you?
I'll raise my hand to that. So this time travel change created a ripple in time which caused the cornucopia to disappear from the Fruit of the Loom logo and most likely affected other things. It's a pain marker. It's a cry for help, like a baby, to get attention. Every action has a reaction. And also, too, there's a lot of things involved with the year 1630. So, and when I look at history, starting in the 1620s, the world has there's so many changes that happen on the world stage, not just in North America, but in Asia and Europe, it seemed to be some kind of time travel, something going on where world dominance was being built and shaped.
And this isn't the only one. It's not the only. U.S. isn't the only faction, at least potentially. You know, I like to go into possibilities and not like, hey, believe me. That it's not the only faction of likelihood of things in the future gaining time travel, and then multiple countries that have gained some type of supremacy and then wanting to anchor back in their past, solidified encompassment and domination of as many timelines as they want if they are in that mindset, which unfortunately some of them, at least for me, I pick up on.
And there's a lot of information packed into these slides. What I'm going to do is when this video gets posted, I'll have a link. So if you want to download the PowerPoint for yourself to check it out, you'll be able to do that. Okay. Where does this happen? You know, where are there's all different time travel facilities around the world. This one gets tracked back to Manhattan, of all places. Central Park, under the reservoir called the Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis Reservoir. So your higher selves know a possible location.
If you want to practice this ability, because we're looking for more people that can, we're not the only ones that do this, everyone can learn how to do abilities. You want to gain sensitivity such as build upon the abilities of your heart with empathy, which goes into the ability to translate energy and motion that comes to you. And the more clear you get your heart and your emotional body, the more able to interpret and translate these energies coming to you. And you start categorizing them, filing them, putting them into different boxes that will come up and come into intuition clearer and clearer as they come to you. Positive, negative energies, emotions come by. And then eventually you'll be able to track back time energy or spatial energy and combine that with the ability of psychic tracking, which I also teach. And there's a bunch of other people that you can, if you're very determined, you can learn how to do this and then be able to learn how to follow your heart or a pointer inside you to a direction, dowsing, muscle testing, pendulum, all this kind of stuff with maps, and closing your eyes using colors with the maps to determine what something you're tracking back. Use things that benefit you, like gaining wholeness into any stolen energy or parts and pieces of yourself and soul shards as you're getting back and making yourself whole and empowered. And a lot of abilities that will come back with that, including the amplification of intuition. And then it will be much easier to track back things that are messing with you or messing with this reality as you expand your heart field to encompass a territory of, like some of the previous speakers, feeling safe, feeling loved. The heart field feels these weights on our heart that compress it back. Compare the times you felt the most amount of love, joy, and happiness and expansion to whatever you feel now. The difference is the heart wall. The heart wall is going to be made of a lot of things. Trapped emotions, trauma, attachment, sometimes another consciousness, imprinting, controlling, whatever the kind of attachment that is. And some will go back to things that you're meant to know about. Sometimes we get visions because we are an authority, or at least our higher self is an authority to help you guys just being here, even not knowing anything. You're helping the world. You're making things better. And you can learn what your higher self is doing on a greater level so that you can then take up the reins of that and do more work here. What is the purpose you came here to do, whatever that is, because that's in your free will, and you follow your bliss, your joy, your happiness, your love, your passions. You can, some of those weights in the heart, some of the visions we get, oh no, tsunami, but you're getting that vision. Maybe you are one of the beings that are able to prevent that sonically or whatever. And then it doesn't happen, and it's like, oh, I'm disappointed, but I'm not disappointed. I don't want that to happen. So things show up on your heart for reasons, and you can interpret and translate them. And the better and faster you get at doing that, the more responsibilities and more power that comes with that, and the more happy you feel and be able to just psychic keto anything that's coming your way and then turn it into something positive or like whatever. I'm trying to encompass all that. Go ahead.
Yeah, so basically the concept is that can we form a collective? Can we be, we'll call it the time defenders. I'm going to skip over this slide. Time defenders.
The cat defenders or any other defender you want to.
Exactly, this is the name we came up with. Formation of a new time travel defense organization to maintain the timelines for the better. A call to all time defenders, keeping watch over the timelines for the highest good of Earth and all of her children. Time alerts when defenders are made aware of timeline incursions. If you'd like to apply, have your higher self send us a telepathic text message and your spiritual resume. And our motto, dedicated to protecting the timelines from assholes who've stolen time travel technology. So we still need a little bit more work with that, but that's the gist of it. Because only those that have earned time travel abilities and are able to uphold that mantle of responsibility are the ones that should be granted it. Anything to do with theft.
And the big key to remember, especially if you're in times of like overwhelm with fear, which will happen in the roller coaster of life, any force of darkness did not earn that ability to overwhelm or dominate or whatever else ability, even time. They stole it from some light that was granted the power because it was seen as responsible management. So the dark does not earn their abilities, they steal them. And so if you know that, anything they use against you, you can find out where they got it from, pull the rug out from under them, and it just disintegrates, and then you gain an immunity to it, and you learn more, and your higher self kind of like becomes immune and stronger to anything that's sent after you. And this same thing with the Earth, micro, macro, where like the cells of her, all that.
So, in conclusion, think about all the things you've learned today. Why the quantum businessman identity, the Fruit Loop serial Mandela effect decoded, frequency repeat of original timeline, the number 64 and how it relates to the chess game, cymatic art and how it helps us to visualize how we render our avatar into this holographic hard light technology realm, the explanation for the missing cornucopia on the Fruit of the Loom logo, and also the formation of the Time Defenders organization. So thank you everyone for your time and putting us the extra moment.
Ladies and gentlemen, Christopher Anatra and Sean Bond.